When the letter arrived, everything I thought I knew about my family shattered in an instant. Betrayal wasn't just a word. It was the key that unlocked decades of secrets, lies, and a fight for justice I never saw coming. I'm Eliza Bennett, 32 years old, standing in the grand foyer of my grandmother's mansion, the ancient heart of the Bennett family legacy. Around me, the buzz of the annual Bennett Family Conference is like white noise, distant, yet deafening. I feel like an alien here, like a ghost trapped among relatives dripping in designer labels and dripping disdain. My simple navy blazer and modest jewelry draw condescending whispers and sideways glances. I'm part of this family by blood, yet a stranger in their eyes, the poor cousin they love to pity, the one who never quite measures up to their lavish expectations. For 10 years, they mocked me mercilessly for my financial struggles, my lack of luxury cars, and expensive vacations. But they have no idea what's in my briefcase today. What they don't know, and what I've never told them, is that while they flaunted empty status symbols, I was quietly building my empire, brick by brick, investment by investment. Before I dive deeper, I want to know, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and stick around because by the end of this story, you'll see how I shattered their illusions and showed my status-obsessed family what real wealth truly looks like. The Bennetts have been fixtures in Boston's real estate market since the 1920s. My great-grandfather took a small inheritance and turned it into a budding empire amid the roaring post-war boom. By the time my grandmother Elizabeth took over in the 1970s, the Bennett name was synonymous with luxury properties spread across New England. Unlike her brash brothers who focused on flash and status, Grandma Elizabeth was a shrewd and pragmatic businesswoman. She believed wealth was meant to be a quiet tool for security, opportunity, and influence, not a billboard for vanity. My father, her youngest son, inherited that same pragmatic mindset. He fell in love with my mother, a kindergarten teacher with no family money. Their union caused a scandal in the Bennetts, who valued pedigree and portfolios over love and character. My parents chose a modest life in a quiet suburb, much to the family's dismay. Dad worked as an architect, designing homes that people loved to live in, not just symbols to impress neighbors. Mom taught children with patience and warmth. They taught me early that money was a tool, not a personality trait. When I was 15, my world shattered. Mom and Dad died in a car accident on their way home from a weekend trip. In an instant, I was alone. Grandma Elizabeth took me in, but the rest of the family whispered behind my back, branding me a charity case. Those first painful months, I often found Grandma in her study late at night, poring over photo albums and property ledgers. "Eliza," she said one night, her voice soft but firm, "most of this family has forgotten what wealth is really for. They think it's about showing off. But real wealth? It's invisible. It's security. It's opportunity. And it's the power to change things." For 3 years before college, I lived with her, absorbing her lessons about finance, investment, and patience. She taught me to read markets, spot undervalued properties, and most importantly, to wait for the right moment. My cousins, Brad, Victoria, Taylor, Jessica, and Blake, grew up very differently. Uncle Richard, who took over as family patriarch after Grandpa passed, believed in conspicuous consumption. At 16, his children got sports cars. Every school break was spent on luxury vacations. Their closets overflowed with designer clothes. Meanwhile, I drove the same used Toyota my parents left me, working part-time jobs, investing every penny in overlooked properties in up-and-coming neighborhoods. Grandma Elizabeth passed during my senior year of college, leaving each grandchild a modest inheritance. My cousins splurged theirs on flashy condos, exotic trips, and yachts that barely saw water. I followed Grandma's advice, living simply in a small apartment, steadily growing my portfolio through anonymous LLCs with the help of Grandma's old lawyer, Mr. Winters. By my 28th birthday, I owned 12 residential properties and 3 commercial buildings, all hidden behind holding companies no one knew were mine. Last year, the sprawling apartment complex where Victoria, Blake, and 3 other family members lived went on sale. The owner wanted a quiet deal, and I quietly bought it for $28 million, almost all my available capital. I made subtle improvements, kept rents fair, and most importantly, kept my ownership anonymous. The family had no clue. But now, as I stand here in Grandma's mansion, I've heard the news. Uncle Richard plans to sell the mansion, the heart of our family's history, to developers who want to tear it down for luxury condos. I pulled up to the mansion on Friday afternoon in my 10-year-old Toyota, the same car I've driven since college. The circular driveway gleamed with luxury vehicles. Brad's Maserati sat proudly near the front steps. Aunt Catherine's Mercedes SUV, Uncle Richard's Bentley, Blake's Range Rover, and Victoria's BMW completed the lineup. My Toyota looked like a relic in a museum. I took a deep breath and adjusted my simple navy blazer. The mansion itself looked unchanged. 3 stories of stately Georgian brick, white columns framing the entrance, and manicured gardens stretching across 4 acres. As I walked up the limestone steps, memories flooded me. This place was my refuge after losing my parents, but now it felt like a battleground between my values and those of my relatives. Martha, the housekeeper who served the family for over 30 years, greeted me warmly. "Miss Eliza," she said, hugging me tightly. "You look more like your grandmother every year." Her embrace smelled of lemon polish and cinnamon, a small comfort in the growing storm. She whispered, "Richard's been here since morning, rearranging the conference schedule with the family attorney. I'm afraid this confirms the mansion sale." Martha helped me carry my bag to my old room, untouched since my childhood. Pale blue walls, white furniture, and a window seat overlooking Grandma's rose garden. On the bookshelf were my old finance textbooks, novels, Grandma's notebook where she taught me to track stocks, and a small framed photo of my parents and me at Cape Cod. I was unpacking when Jessica, my kindest cousin, knocked and slipped inside. Jessica had always been kind to me, her warmth a rare beacon in this sea of cold luxury. "Uncle Richard's planning to sell the mansion," she said quietly. "He's lining up votes and bringing developers to show plans for luxury condos." My heart sank. This place isn't just a building. It's Grandma's legacy. Jessica squeezed my hand. "I'll stand with you, but be ready for a fight." The dinner was predictably brutal. Uncle Richard boasted about his latest development. Aunt Catherine name-dropped charity events, Brad flaunted his Maserati, and Patricia, Richard's wife, suggested I'd be better off with his mentorship. Their words were barbs, aimed to cut my confidence. I bit my tongue and smiled, holding on to hope that the truth would win in the end. After dinner, I wandered the grounds alone, visiting Grandma's rose garden, softly lit in the cool night amongst the fragrant blooms. I promised myself, whatever it takes, I will protect this legacy, both the mansion and the values Grandma instilled in me. Sunlight streamed through my childhood bedroom windows. I dressed simply but professionally and headed to the grand drawing room. The family portraits were gone, replaced by glossy renderings of cold, modern condos. Uncle Richard stood confidently by a projector, ready to push his plan. Richard spoke of family image and maintaining standards, his gaze lingering on me as he preached the importance of status. Then came the slide that stopped my breath. The mansion, labeled Family Residence Reassessment, with a market value of $45 million. Victoria smiled patronizingly and reminded me that sentimentality shouldn't stand in the way of financial sense. Blake bragged about his new car, underscoring the gulf between their world and mine. Richard outlined his plan to sell the mansion, divide the proceeds by holdings, and replace it with luxury condos. The developers handed out glossy brochures, their cold glass and steel designs, an insult to Grandma's warm brick home. When the floor opened for questions, I raised my hand. "I think we should honor Grandma Elizabeth's wishes," I said, voice steady despite my racing heart. She wanted this house preserved as our family's gathering place, a symbol of what real wealth means. The room fell silent after I spoke, my words hanging like a challenge in the thick air. I could feel every eye on me, skeptical, dismissive, some quietly curious. Uncle Richard smirked, his polished nails tapping rhythmically on the mahogany table. "Well, Eliza," he said smoothly, "sentiment is a luxury we can't afford. This family needs to look forward, not backward." The family attorney handed out ballots. I watched as fingers curled around the crisp papers, the tension mounting like a slow-burning fuse. Brad leaned toward Victoria, whispering something I couldn't catch. Jessica caught my gaze and gave a slight nod. She was with me. One by one, votes were cast. The tally would decide the mansion's fate. After the vote, many retreated into smaller groups. I found Jessica near the French doors, whispering urgently, "We need a plan if the vote doesn't go our way. Richard has influence, but his vision blinds him." Jessica's eyes sparkled with determination. "I've heard murmurs that some of the properties he's pushing are undervalued, maybe even manipulated for personal gain." My heart quickened. Could there be more beneath this family feud than just greed and status? That evening, in the dim light of my grandmother's old study, Jessica and I pored over stacks of financial documents we found tucked away in a drawer behind the desk. There were property deeds, investment portfolios, and what caught my eye, a ledger that didn't add up. Certain properties Richard controlled were marked at suspiciously low values, with sales dates overlapping suspiciously with insider purchases. "I think Richard's been cooking the books," I whispered. Jessica nodded. "If we expose this, the whole family will have to listen." The next morning, I received a discreet call from Martha, the longtime housekeeper. "Miss Eliza, you should come to the basement vault. There's something I think you need to see." Curiosity piqued, I followed Martha down the narrow stone steps, past aging portraits and dusty trunks. In the vault, behind a false wall, Martha revealed a leather-bound journal, my grandmother's private diary. I opened the worn pages, reading entries filled with wisdom, regrets, and warnings. One passage struck me. "The family's greed will be our downfall. The mansion is more than bricks. It's our soul. Protect it, for those who come after me." Tucked inside was a folded letter, addressed to me, written in Grandma's careful handwriting. "Dear Eliza, if you are reading this, then I am no longer with you. I want you to know that your strength and values are the true legacy of the Bennett family. Beware of those who wear smiles but hide knives. Richard's vision will bring ruin, not prosperity. Use this knowledge wisely, and remember, sometimes, silence is the loudest power." Armed with the diary and ledger, I returned to the family conference. "Before we make any final decisions," I began, "there is evidence of financial manipulation that calls into question the fairness of this vote." Gasps rippled through the room. Uncle Richard's face tightened. "I have documents here that show properties sold below market value, insider deals that benefit only a few." The room erupted into chaos. Cousins and aunts whispered, taking sides. Some looked betrayed, others shocked. Jessica stood beside me, voice firm. "We need transparency and honesty, for Grandma's sake and the family's future." Then, unexpectedly, Aunt Catherine stepped forward. "Richard, this isn't just about money," she said coldly. "It's about control." She revealed that Richard had recently taken out a massive loan against the mansion, putting the entire estate at risk if he failed to deliver on his plans. With tensions boiling over, the family fractured into two camps: those who wanted to protect the mansion and those blinded by profit and ego. I felt the weight of the fight ahead. This was more than a vote. It was a battle for the soul of my family. That night, back in my childhood room, I stared out at the moonlit gardens. I thought of Grandma's words, of strength, patience, and the power of silence. Tomorrow, the real fight begins. The tension in the mansion was palpable as the next family gathering was called. This meeting would decide the fate of everything: the estate, the family's honor, and the legacy Grandma had fought so hard to protect. The grand hall, usually a place of celebration, now felt cold and charged. Faces I'd once trusted were drawn tight with suspicion and fear. Richard, sitting at the head of the long oak table, wore his usual smug expression, but I saw the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Jessica and Aunt Catherine stood firmly beside me, their support a quiet strength. I took a deep breath and began. With calm clarity, I laid out every piece of evidence we had uncovered: the fraudulent loan documents, altered contracts, and secret meetings Richard had tried to hide. I called on employees and advisors to testify about the reckless financial decisions Richard had made, decisions that had put the entire estate at risk. The room grew silent as the truth spilled out like a flood, washing away years of deceit. At tea. First, Richard tried to interrupt, his voice rising in desperation. But the weight of proof was undeniable. His arguments grew weaker, his mask slipping. When Aunt Catherine confronted him with the reality of the hidden debts that could force the mansion to be sold to developers, even his most loyal supporters began to waver. The family voted, and this time the decision was unanimous. Richard was removed from any decision-making power concerning the estate. A trust was created to protect the property and honor Grandma's wishes, a trust I was entrusted to co-chair alongside Jessica and Aunt Catherine. The victory was bittersweet. The man I once called uncle was no longer just an adversary. He was a reminder of how fragile family bonds could become when trust was broken. In the weeks that followed, the family tentatively began to mend. We held gatherings, shared memories of Grandma, and talked openly about the future. Jessica confided, "In me, you saved the mansion. And us. You brought us back together." Her words warmed a part of me I thought was long frozen. One evening, as twilight draped the estate in soft hues, I wandered into Grandma's garden. The flowers she tended bloomed vibrantly, a living testament to her care and love. The mansion, now protected and safe, stood majestic under the fading light. I whispered a quiet promise: to guard this place, to protect our history, and to nurture the family's healing. Holding Grandma's diary close, I read her words again, her hope, her faith in the family's future. The road had been painful and filled with betrayal, but it had also been a journey of strength and resilience. And as the stars began to appear, I knew I was ready to protect the legacy, not just of a mansion, but of family, love, and hope for what lies ahead. Months had passed since the family meeting, and the estate was slowly returning to its lively heart. The echoes of conflict had faded, replaced by laughter, renewed bonds, and the steady rhythm of daily life. Jessica and I had taken on our roles with determination and care, honoring Grandma's wishes in every decision. The trust was secure, and the future looked brighter than it had in years. One afternoon, as the golden sun streamed through the library's windows, I found myself holding Grandma's favorite book, a collection of poems about hope, family, and forgiveness. It was then that I realized what her true legacy was. Not just the mansion or the land, but the strength to overcome betrayal, the courage to seek truth, and the love that could heal even the deepest wounds. I looked out over the garden where Grandma's flowers blossomed, and a gentle peace settled over me. No matter what trials had come before, the family was ready to grow anew, rooted in honesty, trust, and the unbreakable bond of shared history. And in that moment, I knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where the past was honored and the future was ours to write.